Thank you everybody for having me here today. I am very honored to presenting some material on our own urban wildlife refuge here in Albuquerque. My name is Teresa Bell, and I also go by Cherry. I have been in my Fish and Wildlife Biological Technician position for about a month and 6 days. I have been an intern there for 2 years, as was talked about in the intro there. But my first starting into getting into this position started as a conservation crew member. And that is kind of my connection to the land and to the refuge. And I hope to continue on my path in conserving native plants and habitat for Albuquerque, for New Mexico, and wherever that may take me. So I would like to start out by honoring the land and having a land and labor acknowledgement that I personally made about Valle National Wildlife Refuge. While I am not an indigenous native person of this land that I stand, work, and reside on, and do not consider this land as my own, I am honored to be a steward of the land that now makes up Valle National Wildlife Refuge. I want to acknowledge that the refuge occupies 560 acres of unceded ancestral homelands of the Tiwa people. We honor the sovereign decisions of the past, present, and future generations of the Tiwa people who call this land home. I also acknowledge that this refuge would not exist without the work of the grassroots community, whether acquired voluntarily or involuntarily from people of color. This occupancy of this land is a gift, and everyone's presence is welcomed on this. Thank you. So I'm going to go over the brief contents of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of how Valle de Oro, or it's kind of easier to say VDO, so I'll start referring to that slowly, and what it means to be an urban wildlife refuge, a little bit about how we decided to start the designs for the refuge and where we are now, and then a little bit about the management. That's part of my title. So, yeah, awesome. And someone is needs to be muted. Okay, I think I got it. There we go. Awesome. So, a little back history about the refuge and its location. So I took this picture. This is the refuge here. It's in the South Valley Mountain View community, which is the closest cross streets is like Desert and 2nd Street is probably our closest cross streets. If you haven't been there, you should come. The refuge was established in 2012. On the ground work did not start until the environmental assessment was made and finished in 2017. And also had to provide the farmer of the Price's Dairy and the Valley Gold Farm with enough time to collect everything that he needed off of the land and then provide this area for transition. As I said earlier in my land acknowledgement, this is 570 acres. It is fallow fields, and it has been fallow fields for over 100 years. So it's a very interesting restoration project, you know, really starting from ground zero. And in order to purchase this land, we had to purchase both land and water rights. which was all completed for a whole whopping 18.5 million. And that was completed around 2015.
Is this the Valle de Oro?
Land purchase,
18
18.5 million, but how much, certain part of that was the,
All right, so what does it mean to be a urban wildlife refuge? So there's a little definition from Fish and Wildlife that talks about how establishing a new urban refuge is to make sure that you foster environmental awareness and provide outreach. That's something that we really take seriously at Valle de Oro. We even have an environmental justice program that we are starting to establish there at the refuge. And we want to make sure that we started that right away. So before we even started in the on the ground work, we had already the community's involvement full in the bucket of all the work that we were doing on the refuge. We wanted to see what the refuge wanted, or what the community wanted from the refuge and what that may look like. What do they picture this land to be? And how they have been using it prior to our establishment there, but also what they want to see it become in the future. And a lot of that was based off of providing education, providing a place for people to engage with sciences. And that's why what is a better way to get into environmental justice in a place that's completely, or not completely surrounded, but mostly surrounded with a lot of industry. And there's a big significance of the location that we are at that you saw in that map. Also, I said in my land acknowledgement that everybody is welcome. And that also goes into our safe place policy, which means that we do not discriminate against anything or anybody. We also have our safe place policy does not just extend to our human society, but also our wildlife community. So one of the biggest things is we needed to really think about how we wanted to design the habitats for the refuge. And I will go over this a little bit more in detail in a couple more slides, but we wanted to make sure that we provided this area with the surrounding habitats that we find here in the Middle Rio Grande area. So in a couple of slides before, I had a picture of the map, and you can see a little bit on this corner that the Rio Grande, the river is right along here. And so we wanted to look at historical backwaters and try to mimic the type of riparian forest that would be placed in this area, with also providing a demonstration for the different habitats that we see here in Albuquerque. So this brown area is going to kind of mimic, you know, the foothills, more of like the upland, Great Basin, Chihuahuan Desert, grasslands, and then this area with the blue portions here are going to mimic more of those seasonal wetlands, which is our way of trying to revert this back to that mimicking the backwaters that used to be here on this land before it became agricultural. So there were three major factors that came into involving this design. One of them is, I said, we're very community-based. We wanted to see what the community wanted to see, wanted in this space. We also had to think about water availability. water is a really big thing right now, especially with all the drought conditions that we've been having for the, I don't know, longest time. And being able to think about how we could conserve water, thinking about these giant pots of water that you can see on the map and how that may look like. So we had implemented a plan to provide drawdowns and systems where we would be able to provide water from one area, from the north side to the south side if needed. And then also if we need to supply water in different areas. So making as much use as possible throughout the refuge and throughout what we're given as our resources. This big yellow snaking stormwater swale is being put in right now currently at the refuge on the west side, and then also a little bit here on the east side. And what that is, it's a stormwater swale for the northern part of our community to provide an emergency runoff for their lands and things, because there has been issues with flooding in that area, and providing that also kind of benefits the refuge, because we have that emergency runoff for them, but also providing that area for a place for the water to collect, recharge the water table, and then also kind of filter out before it exits out here back into the bosque. So our restoration efforts. This is a little bit of a very blocky version of what we want to see as habitats in the area. As I said, the foothills, like this is going to be this Great Basin Chihuahuan Desert that we want to see. This is where we have our visitor center, which will also have the surrounding habitat in that area. But also we're going to have semi-arid, arid grasslands. And some of these structures have already been constructed, but I will talk about that later. The grasses that we'll see is the blue grama, the alkali sacaton, the salt grass, in the desert, we'll see, cactus, agave, yucca. And on the west side of the refuge, this blue line also is the bar interior drain, which is also used for some of the irrigation, since that there's a mixture of the community that has both the agricultural land and also industry. So there is on the south side the continuing of the need for an irrigation system that's going through the refuge. And this is slated to change and then curve along the back end of the visitor center a little bit. And I think I have a map about that. We've already talked about the Amaca Swale that's put in by Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. And this is the riparian forest, is this like reddish brown and early successional grasslands. So we have these also two snaking acequia systems, which is hopefully going to supply those plants with water in those areas and try to make this nice, beautiful meadow. So with all these different types of habitats, we really basically want to provide an area where it's just a giant pollinator garden, a really native species pollinator garden, a demonstration garden for people to say, hey, I really like these plants. I can put these in my own area or in my land or in my backyard. And then also having the possibilities of being able to connect with wildlife. We want the connection to science and be able to provide this area for people to see restoration happen, especially from reverting fallow fields into native habitat, but also being able to take that as a research opportunity and providing us with feedback, or providing us with with the opportunity to use our area. And then also just that connection to the land and nature that we had defined as one of the things that we needed to do as a refuge, being an urban wildlife refuge. So a little bit about the management. We have a big plan that everybody before me has also been working on, but also we've all been collaborating with everybody on staff, and we work through this program, this development plan, which is a overarching of like what our goal is supposed to be, and then collaborating how we provide community involvement and also have that restoration and what that may look like. So it's a very large effort to work together to provide. These are internal documents. On my end, for the biology program, I work with the habitat side of this plan, and the habitat development management plan and the integrated pest and pollinator management plan. Wow, mouthful. Those two are drawdowns from this giant habitat and visitor service development plan. And those are telling us where we need to, what our goals are and how we achieve those goals, how long it might take us, and trying to provide that approach with what we're going to be doing on the ground. So it goes from having those goals all the way down to, this is how you dig the hole for this plant, and being able to provide, you need to be able to provide this much water for this species. And then the maintenance side of that as well, because we can't just leave the plants, and some of them you can, but oftentimes plants need maintenance and be able to provide areas where we will need them to be established before we allow them to continue their life cycle. And the integrated pest and pollinator management plan is also another continuing document where we want to look at all the tools in our toolbox. We want to be able to use everything that we can to remove undesired species, whether it's wildlife or plants. And this is always under continued research. We are constantly looking at different strategies or different ways to provide techniques that are either from people that are locally in our area, whether that's, you know, game and fish down the hill at the Gordon's waterfowl, and finding out what they're doing with their say Russian thistle, and seeing if there's anything working for them, or if we could apply that there at the refuge. And so, as I said earlier, these development plans are continuing documents. So the reason why is because we also have to implement an area where you have adaptive management. And the reason why you have adaptive management is because there's so many different things that may happen during this time. And we need to be able to change the way that we want to still exceed the goals, but we want to be able to change the way that we may approach certain goals or strategies depending on this whole learning process. This is a giant learning curve for us. And this is a big thing when it comes to thinking about water availability again. Water is going to be just a constant driving factor throughout this process, and we are trying our best to provide adaptive management by providing, you know, drought conditions and what those may look like, so that we can prepare for them. We also want to see the maintenance and management of the plants, and if they're not reacting to a certain area, does that have something to do with the soil quality? Does it have to do with the sunlight, or if it needs to be in a shaded area? But also having this area to complete and continue that document so that other people that come into our staff or continue on with this process is able to look back and not make the same mistakes. It's a giant like lessons learned document, basically. We also want to think about accidental favors that may happen with native species. Say, for example, if you didn't notice before in the map earlier, we're in the direct flight path of both the Sunport and Kirtland Air Force Base. So as I said earlier, we want to make sure that this is a safe place policy, a safe place for both wildlife and humans as alike. So with large birds, we want to make sure that they are not stuck in people's engines and things like that by providing water on the landscape at certain times of the year, or providing the habitat and plants with those seasons where we do need to water that, but also secluding, say, for example, large water birds that may happen during the winter time. If we do accidentally have favors to large water birds, we would take that protocol into, we have a document that talks a little bit more about the procedures that we're doing, and that's just kind of like a risk, an emergency factor, which is really helpful in this adaptive management document. And then also, this also gives us room for all the other factors that we're not thinking about. Things may arise that we don't know may happen down the line. So our current restoration. As I said, we have already started on the stormwater swale. This area right here is a saltgrass meadow seasonal wetland, which is called the playa. And we're currently restoring this area, but the footprint has already been made. So that area has already been finished, and we're working on trying to provide some more events with providing salt grass in this area and letting it kind of just take off. We have these acequias that have been implemented, but they still need to be modified a little bit. And our wetland up here, which is going to supply water to multiple different species, such as saltbush, the rushes, the sedges, I'm pretty sure in the seed bank we have some cattails. So I'm sure that that's going to come up as well. But this area is also has cottonwoods and willows that we've already restored, which is in this hashed colored lines that are here, both in this area and here. And we've been slowly working on providing container plants in that area, like currants, the sumacs. We have some New Mexico olive, or some people call them privets. And we're slowly providing that area where this water, even if it's in the wetland, that's going to still provide water under the water table and recharge those plant roots as they develop. So, common theme is about community involvement. We are happy to say that we're one of the nation's first site-specific public land environmental justice plan at this refuge here in Albuquerque. And here's just a list of the different associations or plans that we have been doing on the refuge. One thing, we want to engage as much as possible the community and also be that respectful and welcoming factor. And in order to do that, we've really noticed that there's a lot of passion in providing the help to the refuge by allowing the community to build their own refuge. So a lot of the community comes out to pull weeds. We have a weed warrior program where all we do is pull weeds all day. We have cleanup on Second Street, where that's also along the fence line of the refuge, where we pull out all the dead tumbleweeds. We also have saltgrass plantings, and we implement having schools come and check out our different amenities, but also the youth crews. I mean, I'm a witness here today because of those youth crews, because I was able to get my hands dirty and I still get my hands dirty, but I'm there to provide another place for another person to come in and really get into conservation in many different factors. And we're hoping to expand that really soon into not just biology and conservation, but also in maintenance as well, and providing, getting into conservation by helping out with equipment and things of that sort. So there's a lot of diverse ways to provide conservation work. And one thing that I've noticed is that it's so much needed nowadays. And there's so many people that would like to be a part of it, but they don't know how. And we have these youth crews to provide the youth, but also we have different programs within the refuge that we implement for the community to be a part of. And that's for anybody. So moving forward, what's next for Valle de Oro? We have a goal to provide more opportunities with citizen science and providing more educational ways to incorporate the schools that we have here, not just in Albuquerque, but in New Mexico. We want to be able to provide resources. We have now an environmental justice library that we are working on as a program, and that area will hopefully provide different resources such as books for school, books for reading about environmental justice, providing maybe even native seeds for people to use, just kind of like the program that's through the public libraries, where you can take seeds and then borrow them. Kind of the same idea is happening for like native seeds, and we would like to provide that on the refuge as well. And a lot of it is getting the restoration started. Now that we're in sort of the phase of the development plans are done, or the development plans are at a place where we can actually start on the ground and start digging. So we have a lot of plants that need to get in the ground. We have a lot of areas where we still need funding, that we even take donations of plants so that we can provide that in different areas of the refuge. There's also the trails and amenities designs for the space is also a big factor that should be coming into play real soon. We hope to start providing a little bit more about what our trail system is going to look like. And we just heard today that we got some funding for some of our trails that we're going to be providing throughout the whole refuge. And that's been really exciting, and figuring out substrates and what those trails are going to look like, incorporating everybody that is able to use wheelchairs, or if they want to do horseback riding or walking or biking, trying to incorporate that onto the area and be able to provide a buffer for plants and habitat and wildlife in order to have their own space, and then also having the anthropogenic space as well. So I am honored here today to talk to you about Valle de Oro, and I am also really excited to announce that tomorrow we're slowly opening up the refuge, so you can come and see the visitor center. I mean, the visitor center is slowly opening. The refuge has been open, but the visitor center is slowly opening, and you can come and check out our exhibits and a little bit more about what we stand for and what we hope to receive as our goal for the refuge. So with that said, does anybody have questions? Yes.
So I can't remember exactly when, but I would say maybe 5 years ago or so, there was a ceremony of some sort of an opening celebration that we went down there, and we were able to walk back there through the whole thing, like where you showed that it would go on the west side all the way down, towards the river and stuff, and we were able to walk through there. Well, then in October this year, I had some free time in an afternoon. I went down there and there was nothing. I couldn't walk anywhere. There was nowhere to drive to the park. There was like absolutely nothing there. Just all I could see was bare fields. There was no way to access it. So between October and now, are you able to again walk back in there, behind there?
Not quite yet. So let me go back a couple slides. It'd be easier if we see a map. So this might not be the best map. So this Amaca Swale, they're actually doing this right now. And in order to do that, there's just a lot of heavy equipment just everywhere buzzing around. And we thought that it would probably be not safe for people to do that, given that, people have a little bit more time on their hands during this time to go and explore this area. We decided that we would just keep the east side open, and we have a few trails that are on the east side. They're very short trails, but we have a mural loop where you can look at all the murals of artists that had provided their art on billboards that we have out there, and then birds are able to perch on them. But for right now, we're hoping that this will be done, give or take, around this October.
And there's no water in anything there now, right? And there's nothing growing,
No.
nothing green in the fields or anything either.
Not in this area, because they've already excavated this area. There is some of the plants that I said that's growing along this west end. And then also here is where we're doing some restoration. But as of right now, even as staff, we have to come through the neighborhood to come through into this area because there are no access roads.
And like you showed, well, actually it shows here too, there's gonna be like three little lakes or ponds or whatever.
Yes.
So there's no water there now. How's that water gonna get there? Do we have to wait, hopefully monsoon seasons, or would you guys put water in there?
We have an irrigation system.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, so the irrigation system will actually come up and into, I think I have a picture of it. So these arrows is a little bit about the irrigation system that we have. And these dark lines are from the irrigation system from the ditch that is provided, that comes off of the Rio Grande.
But that wouldn't happen anytime this summer because you're waiting till about October, you said, till the whole thing gets done, the construction.
Yes and no. We would still like to provide water in places that are necessary. So all these plants need to be watered. And I'm one of the people that go out there to water bucket by bucket if we don't get irrigation water. So we try our best to provide irrigation. We've provided irrigation water 3 weeks back, maybe. And we hope to get some more water, but water availability changes year by year. So we will ask and see if we can get water. And if we can get water, it's a very quick process. Right now, we plan on irrigating this north end area as well. And trying to, since this footprint is already made, And if you didn't notice, it's been windy lately. We don't want the topsoils of that has been placed in this footprint to go away. We don't want that to be just blown out with the wind. We want the sediment to stay there. So we're thinking of using the water as a way to dampen down that area. So we hope to have water sometime soon, to answer your question, but every time we ask, they tell us to wait. So it's, sometimes they'll tell us, 6 o'clock at night on May 3rd, and then May 4th morning, we're starting the irrigation ditch. So it's a very fast process because it's so valuable. It's so valuable right now. Any other questions?
I think I heard you say that you were going to put agave in one area, and that has never historically been present in this part of New Mexico.
Okay.
I don't know the exact dividing line, but of course you find it in Deming and Alamogordo and further south, but it has never been historically in this part of New Mexico.
Okay. I guess I misspoken. I apologize. I
Oh,
probably
well,
just thought about just the Chihuahuan Desert and what we see in Chihuahuan Desert. But
yeah,
yes.
and actually, my understanding is that according to Brown's biological communities, this is actually Great Basin grassland rather than Chihuahuan. Chihuahuan is again further south of the Middle Rio Grande.
Yeah, and
So-
we're providing a very small space for the Chihuahuan Desert because we want that to provide a place for, we have a very small percentage of the refuge for that, so that we have that place for a demonstration garden as a way for people to say, we're able to even still provide for like chocolate flowers, things like that in this area. And they grow pretty well there, so it's kind of, we try our best to mimic, but we can't be exact because, there's probably still species that don't exist now that have probably been in this area as well. So we are doing our best to be there as much as possible, and that's basically our overarching goal.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Are you gonna be growing any kind of grain to attract animals there like they do at Bosque del Apache or anything?
No, we are slated to just be native habitat. Bosque is, I believe, a little bit more onto conserving the waters, the birds and more avian species versus we're just slated right now to just do restoration. It's just the vegetation is what we're focusing on at the moment.
Are you expecting to get any migratory animals come through?
Yes, we do all the time. We get a lot of sandhill cranes that come down that are heading down to Bosque. But also we oftentimes have them stay there. We have Canada geese and mallards. We have multiple different species, smaller shore species that come to our refuge. We have a lot of killdeer that show up, that hang around the visitor center. And we have I think a very well-established population of Western meadowlarks that come here and really take advantage of the saltgrass meadow that we have in the southeast end of the refuge.
I've seen egrets there too.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do have snow egrets, and as soon as water hits for irrigation, they are there. Like they just pop out of nowhere. It's really fun. We actually saw a great blue heron fly in from our visitor center this morning. So, yes.
I thought I heard early in your talk, you said you had acquired various water rights for it.
Yes,
And then later on, you said you were waiting for permission to use the water rights. Use the water or get the water.
yes,
If you
because we're,
have the right, don't you?
No.
yeah, it's still on
Is it
a shared irrigation ditch,
Ah,
so
okay.
it's like, so the northern communities above us also have irrigation, and yes, we all do have the water rights to it. We're kind of, we have like the land ownership of another agricultural field.
Yeah, you did say you had junior right.
Yes.
So the seniors drink it all first.
I'm sorry?
The senior rights get it all first.
Yeah, we needed those to be able to provide different areas of the refuge and the amount that we needed. But it say that there's, it's, I think, more or less also a water pressure thing, because then you also have to be able to provide water in certain areas north of us. So for them to flood their areas, they have to shut the gate down and then schedule people down, going south as they provide that pressure, because everybody doesn't have water. So it's kind of that same issue that comes back to haunt us. Yes,
That's from the chat. Sarah asks, are there 1 or 2 new plantings you can recommend we check out this summer? Along with the visitor center, of course,
1 or 2 new plantings at the refuge.
at the refuge.
Yes. So in this Great Basin, Chihuahuan Desert area that's right here, we have a mural loop that we provide that surrounds some of our Sandia High School students that planted some mesquites, some wax currants, and we just provided some cactus. Thank you, Laurel Ladwig, for providing us with some prickly pear cactus that's in the area. But also we have, let's see, I'm trying to find places where we have different plants coming up. We may have some salt bushes that are along our El Camino trail that comes down here to the playa. And that's also a trail that's open as of right now. Hopefully at the end of this year, you can see all of the fun stuff that's been happening on the other side when that opens back up after Amaca is developed.
Oh, another question. Is anyone tracking animal species present year by year, especially arthropods?
We do have a few people that have been doing certain species. So we had somebody come down for the past couple of years to do a dragonfly larva monitoring. And they took dragonfly larva monitoring from different various areas of the refuge and also along the Rio Grande. But if you are interested in providing more monitoring onto the refuge, then you can also talk to management about providing an SUP and being able to develop more of that research, because we would like to hear about how we're doing, because arthropods is a really good way to indicate the health of the soil and of the habitat development. Any other questions in the chat?
Nope.
When is the visitor center open? What hours, what days?
So right now, I think it's Thursday through Saturday. I wrote it down. I believe it's Thursday through Saturday, and it'll be from, I think it's 8 to 5. Jennifer, do you know what the times are?
9 to 4.
9 to 4. Okay, so 9 to 4, and we'll be doing a slow opening just because we don't have half of the refuge open, but that is opening up this week. Yes.
You mentioned things like chocolate flowers. Are there some things that were already there that you're keeping that will be in bloom this year?
Yeah, so we also have, I forgot to mention, we've been restoring a little area, which is a little, almost like a little pocket of milkweed that we're providing for monarchs to come through for migration, but also that's slated for native species that are in the area. And one thing that we had noticed last year was in the seed bank, we have a lot of horsetail milkweed. And that's various areas that it's just popping up. It's not bloomed yet, but it's getting close to. We have a lot of showing, and that little pocket of milkweeds that we planted is here, but the horsetail is taking over everywhere, which is awesome. We are also doing currently a seed bank study so that we can provide and see what is in the seed bank before we can go ahead and, if we don't want to hack our native species that we're trying to establish, but also being able to harvest those and put them in areas that we want them would be very helpful.
Jennifer has an addition to the open times. You can probably read it in the chat.
Oh. Thursday through Saturday
In May.
in May, and then Tuesday through Saturday starting June. All right, thank you for being patient.
I think you said this was part of the ancestral Tewa-speaking people's territory. Are there any
Yes.
archaeological finds that's been found?
Not after the 100 years of agricultural. Yeah, we had somebody that came out to do that before we started the environmental assessment. I think it's actually a part of the environmental assessment to see if there was any artifacts left. Yeah, but they are very much involved in our involvement. They're one of the communities that we provide a lot of, we get a lot of education and knowledge about this land and what they would like to see this look like. Yes, there are more planting
Could you
opportunities.
read it? Could you read it?
Oh,
Sorry,
yes. I believe this is from Sharon. Is that the one that you're seeing?
Yes.
Okay. I volunteered to plant trees and bushes over the years, mostly willow and cottonwood. Are there more planting opportunities coming up? Yes, Sharon, we do have more opportunities. We hope to provide more opportunities sometime soon. We actually just finished doing a container plant Autobahn event that was there on the west side, and we had everybody caravan through the neighborhood to get over there, which was really awesome. But we hope to provide more opportunities for container plants such as the golden currants, the New Mexico olive. We would like everybody to be engaged with providing saltgrass clubs in the playa and any other opportunities to provide species, especially when it comes to our container plants and our poles. We'll need a lot of hands on deck because there's only 3 of us on the bio program. So check out our website, and then also there's our volunteering is also opening as well. So there's also websites and links and resources through our website to look at other links and resources for applying to be a volunteer if you would like to. Yes, sorry.
You said in the beginning that where what you just did is it's like urban sort of urban.
Yes.
And it's like surrounded and you get surrounded by like industry. And I know like the South Valley there, it does have a lot of beaches. Are there, I mean, is that people look for bringing this up, people look for like contamination?
Yeah.
Chemical contamination, or is there any There are problems with contamination getting onto the main land from outside.
There are potentials for all of that. We do have, as I was talking about the dragonfly monitoring, that's actually a monitoring to check the larva for mercury and other different contaminants that may be running off. So we're still talking to everybody and gathering information about that. But as of right now, we're so new and there's not many monitoring opportunities. We're hoping to open that up with the citizen science, but we hope to be able to monitor that and see what that may look like. Yeah, that's a stay tuned, hopefully. All right. Oh,
Do you have a website you can put up that would give us a way to connect with information when you're doing a certain kind of planting where people could join that? Do you have a website we would want to use?
we have a Facebook as well as the National Wildlife Refuge
Okay,
by the Oro website.
okay.
Let me see if I can just pull it up here and we can all see it on my screen. If it's gonna work. Yes, so you can also click on these links that say get involved. And then these blue prints are also ways to apply by clicking on it and then sending an email to that email. And we have somebody designated to check those and get you in contact, but also there's the volunteer.gov. And I will add that to the chat here too. Looks like I got a new question. So what's my favorite part of my job? My favorite part is the fact that there is such diverse different things that happen throughout my day. I could be out watering 900 trees and then next minute there is there's a dog that's, running around the refuge and I have to go find its owner, or a cow, or, being able to just go ahead and be adaptive as well, kind of the land gives me a very good representation of how adaptive that I need to be in order to tolerate my job. So I think my favorite part is, and also there's the Friends of Valle de Oro website that's also up. And if you guys would like to see that, that's here too. But yeah, so I think that's my favorite job, is just being able to do all kinds of different things all the time.